Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I really hope you're all well. This is the fourth time I filmed this intro because apparently I just can't speak today or can't verbalize what I'm trying to say eloquently enough. Anyway, today I'm back with another book haul. I really hope you enjoy it. This one's one with a bit of a difference, so I'm just going to get straight into it. So, okay, there are 3 books that I do not have in physical format to show you, so I'm going to talk to you about those first of all, and then we're going to get on to the book haul, which is very exciting. It's a bit of a book haul with a difference. You will see why when I start talking about the books that I've hauled. But before I get into that, the books that I do not have here in physical copy, first of all, very excitingly, my best friend has published her debut novel, which is insane. I have had the privilege of knowing Alex since I was 5 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, I think, and I'm 28 now, so it's a very long friendship. And Alex is an amazing person. She's very creative, she's a fantastic writer, and she's had this book in her mind for a very long time. I remember her talking about it at kind of a college, and yeah, it's taken 7 years and she's written it, and I'm really, really proud of her. So that is the first book I want to talk to you guys about today. Now, I'm gonna sound like a terrible friend when I say this, but it's not because I'm a terrible friend, it's because I didn't want to spoil the book, but I don't really know much about what it's about, simply because, like I say, I didn't want to spoil it. But the book is called Marrow, and you can download it on all your Kindle and e-reader type app situations. I will leave the link in my bio, in the down bar for you, and I'm also obviously going to have a picture of it on the screen while I'm talking about it. But this is the first in a brand new fantasy series. Alex has made this book a little bit more immersive as well, in that while she was writing, she had a playlist that she would listen to, and she has released that playlist along with the book. So if you have, I think it's on Spotify and Apple Music, but I'm not sure, it's definitely on Spotify. If you have Spotify, you can listen while you read, and each chapter correlates to a song, and I just think that's really, really cool. So it kind of makes the whole thing that little bit more immersive and you're a little bit more involved. I love that. So that is the first book that I am obviously going to be talking about quite a bit, I think, on this channel, but I definitely think you guys should go and check it out, give it a read, see what you think, let her know. She's got a Goodreads set up for it as well, so definitely go and leave some reviews and let her know what you think. But that is the first and the most exciting book that I have to talk to you about this month. Next we have Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I saw this in WH Smith a year or so ago now, I think, and I remember picking it up and thinking it sounded really good, and I can't remember who else had read it. Someone I knew was reading it or had read it, or someone on Instagram or YouTube, or somebody somewhere that I knew was reading the book and was saying it was good. And I kept wanting to pick it up, but I just didn't, for whatever reason. And then obviously with the Amazon Prime show coming out, everybody is talking about it, and I've seen a lot of buzz around it on BookTube recently, and I was like, I want a slice of that pie. So I got Little Fires Everywhere. I know next to nothing about it, and again, I've deliberately not read anything about it because I don't want to spoil it, because I feel there's obviously a lot about it, a lot of information going around at the minute because of the show, and yeah, I don't want to spoil that. So I want to get around to reading it quite quickly because I do want to watch the show as well while it's still kind of like a hot topic. So yes, I have got Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng, and I think that's probably going to be one of the next books that I read. Okay, so the next book, and like I said, I've got it up on Goodreads, is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Now, okay, there's a couple of reasons why I bought this book. First of all, because I'm going to actually be doing a new series on my channel starting very soon, hopefully not long after you see this video. I'm not going to say anything else, but that is the main reason why I bought this book at the time. Secondly, I really, really, really loved My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. I read it for Halloween, like, I think 2 or 3 years ago now, and I just remember being completely hooked by it, really enjoying it. Similarly to what I was saying about my friend's book, actually, each chapter pertains to a song, but rather than having the actual playlist available, each chapter was just named after the song. But I thought that was pretty cool. I really enjoyed it, and it definitely added to the like Hammer horror vibes of the book. Like, I really enjoyed it anyway. But basically, this book is, I'm going to just read the Goodreads blurb for you. So it says, fried green tomatoes and steel magnolias meet Dracula in the southern flavoured supernatural thriller set in the 90s about a women's book club that must protect its suburban community from a mysterious and handsome stranger who turns out to be a blood-sucking fiend. Patricia Campbell has always planned for a big life, but after giving up her career as a nurse to marry an ambitious doctor and become a mother, Patricia's life has never felt smaller. The days are long, her kids are ungrateful, her husband is distant, and her to-do list is never really done. The one thing she has to look forward to is her book club, a group of Charleston mothers united only by their love for true crime and suspenseful fiction. In these meetings, they're more likely to discuss the FBI's recent siege of Waco as much as the ups and downs of marriage and motherhood. But when an artistic and sensitive stranger moves into the neighbourhood, the book club's meetings turn into speculation about the newcomer. Patricia is initially attracted to him, but when some local children go missing, she starts to suspect the newcomer is involved. She begins her own investigation, assuming that he's a Jeffrey Dahmer or Ted Bundy, but what she uncovers is far more terrifying, and soon she and her book club are the only people standing between the monster they've invited into their homes and their unsuspecting community. That, to me, sounds pretty damn good. Now, looking at Goodreads, the reviews seem... I mean, it's still a fairly new book. I feel like it's only been published recently, in the last couple of months, so... yeah. It's got a few low reviews, but I think the average review is kind of like a 4-star, so I think it's going to be good. Like I say, I enjoyed my best friend's exorcism anyway, and I'm going to go into it with an open mind and just see what happens, but I am excited. Okay, so next up, I have Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. Now, I have actually read this, but I read this so long ago, like I can't even remember. I think I was in college, and I remember kind of not really vibing with it, and I think it's because I expected it to be like Twilighty, because this was back in the day when Twilight, I think the movies were still coming out, so it was still, vampires were still like hot property, and I was expecting more of like yeah, more of like a Twilighty type book, and instead I didn't. But basically, I can't even remember Lestat, I think the name is, of the vampire in this, and essentially this is an interview with a vampire. That is what it is. I can't really say anything else. I can't actually really remember it very well, but I'm excited to reread it, and I think it'll be interesting to compare a more sophisticated type of vampire fiction to Twilight. Not that there's anything wrong with Twilight, but sparkly vampires versus the vampire Lestat, bit different. On to another book. Obviously, we have one that I've seen doing the rounds quite a little bit on Instagram recently, and this is Shantaram by Gregory David Roberts. Now, I believe this is semi-autobiographical, in that I think some of the situations and scrapes that befall Gregory in this book are kind of embellished somewhat for the benefit of the reader, but I believe this is mostly a true story of Gregory's time in the early 80s. He was a heroin addict and an armed robber, and he was imprisoned in Australia. He escaped and made it over to India and ended up living in the Bombay slums. He became a member of the mafia. He was not the nicest guy, but he also pioneered like a healthcare system within the slums, which I find so interesting. Apparently he also acted in Bollywood and fought with the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. Amazingly, Roberts wrote Shantaram 3 times after prison guards trashed the first 2 versions. So I think this sounds actually incredible, and I'm really excited to read it. I have been going through a bit of a crisis in terms of my reading material recently, in that I feel like I've come to the end of my love affair with YA for the time being, and I do this when I read a genre of books pretty much exclusively for a while. I then burn out and I don't want to read that genre anymore, and I did that with crime fiction about 10 years ago. All I read was crime and thriller, and it got to a point where I was guessing who did it every time. I was guessing the twists before they happened, and it just kind of spoiled the genre for me. So then I didn't pick up a crime book or a thriller book for pretty much 10 years. And now I'm slowly getting to the point where I kind of enjoy them. Most of the time I still find them a bit poor, but then there's the occasional gem where I'm like, this was brilliant. I'm getting to that point with YA. I feel like I've read pretty much exclusively YA now for like 6 years, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's a great genre. Some of my absolute favourite books are YA novels, but I am also 28 years old and I'm struggling to vibe with young characters these days. So I'm trying to get through the last of my YA backlog before I allow myself to start reading things like Shantaram. But I am very, very excited by this. I think I'm just ready for kind of more mature characters and a more heavy-going kind of mature read, because I want to challenge myself, you know. And speaking of challenges, this is where we're getting on to the brunt of the book haul, because I bought myself a lot of classics. I've never read much classic literature, so I've read Wuthering Heights, and I loved Wuthering Heights. I've read a lot of modern classics, so things like Lolita, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, On the Road, In Cold Blood, oh my god, like The Great Gatsby. I've read a lot of Fitzgerald. I love Fitzgerald. So I've done a lot of what would be classed as modern classics, but I've never really delved right into the classics, you know, like talking pre-1900s literature here, pretty much. So this is what I've decided to do, and obviously I think I've spoken quite extensively about my 100 books to read before you die challenge that I'm undertaking this year. Obviously, again, not trying to read all 100 because that would be ridiculous, but trying to read a chunk of that this year. And a lot of these books are on that list, which is another reason why I bought them, because I'm going to have to get around to them eventually. So I figured, right, I'm going to challenge myself and try and sprinkle these into my monthly reads. So we have a lot of classics here. I'm just going to start. One thing that annoys me about Penguin Classics, by the way, is the covers on the front all look amazing. When you buy them though, they're pretty much always battered in some way by the time they get to you. And like some of them are like this on the spine, and then some of them are like that on the spine. So they don't all match on your bookcase. That's just really annoying. Like, why would they do that? Why don't they just have one uniform spine situation? And also, why every time they arrive are they damaged in some way? It's very annoying. Anyways, the first one I have is Macbeth by Shakespeare. Now, I studied Macbeth at school. I actually really like Macbeth. I've not read much Shakespeare. I've read Midsummer Night's Dream, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, and that's all. And I don't remember I remember Macbeth, but I don't remember kind of the ins and outs of it. I don't think we read it. We read it extensively, but I don't think we read the entire thing extensively. I'm pretty sure we just picked out certain scenes to study in more depth for school. So I'm excited to read Macbeth. These books, honestly, like at least half of the book, pretty much. Oh my god, I failed at showing you that then. Wow. Like half of the book is like the further reading, and I always feel guilty when I don't read the further reading, because then I feel like I've not completed the book. But at the same time, I don't always enjoy reading like introductions, honestly. Like, I really don't, especially with these, because they're so dry and sometimes it just shoots right over my head, and I feel like they're more for kind of like literature students and people who are studying the books in like great depth. But whatever. Anyway, so we have Macbeth, set in Scotland. I'm just testing my knowledge here of all these classics now. So Macbeth is set in Scotland. It follows the story of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. This was known as the Cursed Play, so there was a while when people wouldn't actually say the play's name, so they'd call it the Scottish play. And yeah, so Macbeth is basically the ruler of Scotland, and he murders his king. I'm just gonna read the back. Macbeth is promised a golden future as the ruler of Scotland by supernatural forces. Spurred on by his wife, he murders the king to ensure his ambitions come true, but he soon learns the meaning of terror. Killing once, he must kill again and again while the dead return to haunt him. Macbeth is an anatomy of fear and a bleak portrayal of what some will do to achieve their desires. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm actually really excited for this. So next I have Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and this is his, I'm gonna read the back of all of these so that I can give you a proper overview of what they are, because my knowledge of the classics is pretty poor, which is the whole reason why I'm undertaking this exercise, to read them and get a better understanding. So Dostoevsky's great novel of damnation and redemption evokes a world where the lines between innocence and corruption, good and evil blur. It tells the story of Raskolnikov, a destitute and desperate former student who wanders through the slums of St. Petersburg and commits a random murder without remorse or regret. He imagines himself to be beyond conventional moral laws, but as he embarks on a dangerous game of cat and mouse with a police investigator, he is pursued by the growing voice of his conscience and finds the noose of his own guilt tightening around his neck. I like the fact that classics always have some kind of like real moral to the story. Like, it's not just about the narrative, there is always like a deeper meaning and like a moral. Oh god, wow, this video is a hot mess. Anyway, next we have Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is obviously the original vampire novel. I have never read this before. I believe this is told pretty much exclusively through letters and journal entries, which I find really interesting for a book that was published in the 1800s, I think. Like, I do feel like these books, a lot of them were so ahead of their time. Yeah, this was first published in 1897. So yeah, I'm really excited to read this. Like I said, I've never tried Dracula, which is quite shocking considering I do like a bit of vampire fiction. So I'm excited for Dracula. Next up we have Pride and Prejudice by Jane Eyre. So this follows the love story of Elizabeth Bennet and Fitzwilliam Darcy, who misjudge and then challenge and change each other. It's also a novel about the search for happiness and self-knowledge in a world of strict social rules where women must marry well to survive. I am really looking forward to reading Pride and Prejudice. Did I say by Jane Eyre? I meant by Jane Austen. I'm just going to put that down. Okay, carrying on with the classics. We have Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina. Now this to me is like the epitome of a society novel. I have honestly picked this up and not bought it so many times, mostly because I was trying not to spend money, but I've really wanted to read Anna Karenina. It's basically about a woman, Anna Karenina, who has like everything she could possibly want. She's got wealth, beauty, popularity, her son, and then she meets Count Vronsky and they have an affair, and this affair basically just scandalizes society. And I just think that sounds so cool. Like, again, this was published in the 1800s. 1873 it was published in Russian. I'm very excited to read this. I feel like it'll be a very interesting take, obviously, on society then, and I'm just wondering like what parallels I can draw between 1800 society and today's society and how people interact or react to scandal and gossip, etc. We have Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Again, an absolute classic. So Jane Eyre endures loneliness and cruelty in the home of her heartless aunt and the cold charity of Lowood School. This troubled childhood strengthens Jane's natural independence and spirit, which prove necessary when she takes a position as a governess at Thornfield Hall. But when she finds love with her sardonic employer Rochester, the discovery of a shameful secret forces her to make a terrible choice. It's a novel of intense and emotional power, heightened atmosphere, and fierce intelligence. It dazzled and shocked readers with its passionate depiction of a woman's search for equality and freedom on her own terms. This was published in 1847, and again, it sounds so ahead of its time. I feel like perhaps this was around the time of the suffragette movement in the UK. Now, this is testing my knowledge of history because I can't actually remember when the suffragettes were campaigning for the women's right to vote. I want to say it was in like the 1820s. No, that can't be right. Am I getting confused? I'm definitely getting confused here. It was not the 1820s. Yeah, this might have been before the suffragette movement, in which case it's incredibly ahead of its time. But I just think it'll be a very interesting take on early feminism as well, so I'm looking forward to reading this very much. Another Shakespeare, now we have Hamlet. This is one that I have never studied. This is a lot bigger actually than Macbeth, so this will be very interesting. Apparently it's Shakespeare's longest play. There we go, I just opened up a random page and it told me that. Fantastic. So it says, a young prince meets his father's ghost in the middle of the night, who accuses his own brother, now married to his widow, of murdering him. The prince devises a scheme to test the truth of the ghost's accusation, feigning wild insanity while plotting revenge, but his actions soon begin to wreak havoc on innocent and guilty alike, and in Shakespeare's verbally dazzling and eternally enigmatic exploration of conscience, madness, and the nature of humanity itself. And this sounds very good. This is, I think, my friend Jess's favourite Shakespeare, and like I say, I've never read it and I've never seen it, so I'm excited to see what it's about and see if it's actually, to me, my favourite, because, yeah, at the minute, I think my favourite is A Midsummer Night's Dream, but I'm willing to change my mind. And then finally we have Don Quixote by Cervantes. Now this is an interesting one, not only because I finally know how to pronounce Don Quixote after like so many years of seeing it written and being like Don Quixote. So Don Quixote is basically the first kind of like knight novel. I think it says on the back here that it's like the first postmodern novel? Oh, there we go. Often considered to be the first modern novel, Don Quixote is a wonderful burlesque of the popular literature its disordered protagonist is obsessed with. So basically, Don Quixote has become so entranced by reading romances of chivalry that he determines to become a knight-errant and pursue bold adventures accompanied by his squire, the cunning Sancho Panza. As they roam the world together, the aging Quixote's fancy leads them wildly astray. At the same time, the relationship between the two men grows with fascinating subtlety. This, everyone says, is actually really funny, and I, like I've said a million times, I've like picked this up in bookshops and A, put it down because I didn't know how to pronounce it, and B, kind of put it down because I was intimidated because it is thick. Like, it's a big ass novel, like big, like nearly 1,000 pages. But I am excited. Like, I still have War and Peace to read as well, and they're the two books that I feel like when people say like, what's your favourite novel, I really want to be able to be like War and Peace, Don Quixote, Anna Karenina, you know, these like Russian literature beasts, even though this isn't Russian, but yeah, that's kind of like what I want to be able to say rather than being like Harry Potter, which there is nothing wrong with Harry Potter being your favourite book either, and like I do love Harry Potter, it is my favourite book. I do want to be able to have like a better, well-rounded view of classical literature as well, so that when people do talk to me about books, I'm not just kind of talking about more child-friendly novels. I'm not going to say childish because they're not childish, and I think that these novels are great and you can read them anytime in your life because you'll get something new out of them every single time you read them. But yeah, I want to have a more well-rounded view of classical literature and a well-rounded understanding. So guys, that is my book haul. It's quite an intimidating book haul, but I'm actually really excited to kind of embark upon this new reading journey, let's say. But yeah, I do want to have kind of a more well-rounded view of classical literature. I want to be able to express my thoughts on it eloquently, and I want to be able to understand when people are talking about these books and referencing these books, what they're talking about and referencing. So this is going to be an interesting exercise for me, and I think maybe I will make this into a series as well on YouTube, where I kind of talk about the classics and maybe film my experience reading them for the first time. Like, I don't know if that's something that you guys would like, but it's definitely something that I am considering doing, because yeah, I am interested. I'm really excited. I'm very intimidated, and I'm worried that I'm going to kind of pick these up full of excitement and then hate every single one of them, but I'm sure that won't be the case. I think I'm only a little bit apprehensive because I didn't enjoy my reading experience of Dorian Gray this year, mostly because there was just nothing remotely likable about any of those characters, and I feel like that's kind of the point. Like, they're supposed to be morally grey and whatever, but I just did not vibe with that book. So I'm hoping that's not the case with these. I'm sure, you know, I'm not gonna like every single book, but I'm excited to be able to also say at the end of this year that, like, yes, I have read War and Peace, yes, I have read Don Quixote, and be able to actually hold a conversation about them. So on that note, I'm going to go. My mother has just shouted me to tell me that she has a glass of Prosecco waiting downstairs for me, and the lure of alcohol and sunshine is very strong. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what you thought about them, if you're excited to learn more about the classics as well, if you're going to undertake this journey with me maybe, that could be good. Let me know. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in my next video very soon. Bye guys!